Yeah, come and sit down now. You've been late for a photo, for a group photo. You know,
Who cares about the photos?
Oh, this is how you are. Now people out there know. Nobody doesn't care about photos. Yes. It's you that said it by yourself.
You said it.
You that said it by yourself.
You do know before Unsa started capturing me appropriately, she always used to get me at the wrongest moments. So
It's in a setup. Yeah, you are being recorded. But this man.
Freshly pressed.
Alright.
98.1.
Alright, studio is live. Phones on silent, please. Mics are up. Studio. And good morning, Lagos. It is 7:13. Time for us to go into detailed analysis of our newspaper stories this morning. Welcome to Smooth 98.1, and this is Freshly Pressed 981. Lagos this morning to go through the stories with us and give us detailed analysis. We have in the studio, we had Fred at Miss FB Alison.
Mr. FB Alison.
Good morning.
Good morning, Fred.
And at Esho one, that's Ayo. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. And what's your name over there?
Wow. Judge I.
Lagos, I have so many things to say, but I'll just keep it in because it's a Tuesday.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Welcome. Lagos, do you know that you can join us on different platforms this morning? Go over to our live stream or on youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos. You can tweet at us using the hashtag freshlypress981, and you can send us WhatsApp messages to this number.
It's 0809-444-0981.
All right, but first let's get into the first set of stories, shall we? First story, of course, is an update on the Shiite procession that took place in Abuja yesterday. Many killed as Nigerian soldiers opened fire on Shiite protesters in Abuja. That's a headline that the Premium Times is running with. And the stories of those who were killed comes from witnesses who say that at least 16 people between 16 and 22, according to witnesses in the area, say that they were killed after Shiite protesters attempted to break a barricade of Nigerian soldiers around the flyover in Karu. Now, very serious stuff, because there are videos going around that Premium Times could not independently verify or authenticate. But essentially, again, the witnesses comment on seeing bodies everywhere. They couldn't pick up the bodies. Even when people were, they attempted to bury some people that they were able to move from the area, and they were denied access to burial grounds in Karu, saying that they were Shiite members, not Muslims. I mean, when we take a look at the violence that continues to escalate, again, just a couple of days after similar violence on Saturday against another Shiite procession, where the army said they were not the aggressors and that they were attacked by Shiite members, and then they opened fire. But no soldier was killed in any of these altercations, and yet we have bodies, pictures of bodies just littering the streets. Your thoughts?
It's quite interesting. So for most neutral observers, the question has to be asked as to why, whenever there is some form of a confrontation between the military and Shia Muslims, right, it always ends in a bloody situation. That's the first question. And this is not something that has just been happening this year. I mean, this dates back essentially in its current form to 2015 and the incident in Zaria that led to the proscription of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria, which is the umbrella Shia body in Nigeria, and the arrests and continued detention of the leader of that group, Ibrahim El-Zakzaki, right? So clearly, as an institution, the military has, if not consciously or intentionally, unwittingly singled them out for to be treated with a hard-hardened manner, and a lot of the response on social media has essentially mirrored that fact, considering that the military, its rules of engagement, is not supposed to utilize the hard option as its first line of recourse whenever it is dealing with a situation which could seriously escalate out of control. And so that has to be the question that has to be asked.
So let's consider a couple of factions. One, it did become a prescribed movement body, which is something to consider, and yet we still see them processing, we still see them gathering. The other being that As you said, this violence has reached its current form following the 2015 massacre of hundreds of their members, and a report had actually indicted Adeni Oyebade, a major general, and several other military officers for their role in the large-scale murder of about 347 members of theirs. You mentioned Zakzaki as well. There's a concern that this could escalate even further out of control. We could never forget the periods in Abuja where we experienced continuous bombings, and this, of course, was perpetrated by Boko Haram. Looking at all these factors, what could be done by each party to de-escalate the tensions in place at the moment?
Just a quick one on the prescription. So the organization that was prescribed was the IMN, right? Yes, but exactly, okay. Yeah, but Shia Muslims, at least constitutionally, are still protected, and their constitutional right to freedom of worship, freedom of association is still guaranteed, right? Okay, so that explains the fact that they can still gather. Yeah, they can still gather, and they can still try to achieve certain outcomes as a collective. To the second point, if you are a Shia Muslim in Nigeria, this consistent behavior on the part of not just the military but the Nigerian government has to be concerning for you, especially when you consider that your leader is currently still in detention. And so a huge olive branch that could be extended to them would be to get some clarification as to the current condition and the current state of their leader, right? There are some suggestions.
Undisclosed locations, and it's only paraded. We've seen him twice in 2 years.
Yeah, essentially. And there are at least 3 court orders mandating his freedom, right, by various courts in this country. And so that would be a huge olive branch extended to the to Shia Nigerians from the federal government. From their own end, it's very hard to see what they have to offer, essentially, because from what happened in Zuba on Saturday and what happened in Cairo today, it's not exactly clear what they were doing in the area, if they were protesting or if they were just gathering.
Because there were stories that they also attacked the ammunition.
They attacked ammunition, they waylaid the military,
the ammunition,
and all of that. A lot of this is circumstantial. Is he said, she said. Yes, so it will be interesting to see how that pans out.
Thank you very much for that, Ikemesit. Appreciate it. Moving on next to our next story from the Guardian newspaper. Again, the federal government and the governors failed to agree on a new minimum wage. Labour still insisting 30,000. Federal government saying 24,000. States are saying, well, we can't pay 18,000. So, we would like to, but the reality is we can't. Your thoughts on this, Fred?
Yeah, it just shows our current state of, I want to say, so the governors are the ones feeling like they're going to be stuck with paying this.
Yes.
Historically, we have governments and states that have gone 6, 7, 10 months, haven't paid their workers. Everyone promising to pay your workers now turned to be to be a voting promise. You're promising, I'll come into office, I'll pay the salary. This is supposed to be basic. This is supposed to be what. So if you really pay attention to it, it's the cross section of how the governors not actually focus on getting the states to be efficient, figuring out other ways to generate income.
But then can efficiency happen within the space of time? I mean, we have from now till November 6th before another industrial action is supposed to take place according to the labor unions. Even if the state governors were working on efficiency, even if they were working on how we can become more viable as states, doesn't that take time?
It takes time, but you coming in as a governor needs to pay attention to that kind of thing. Like it's not just coming to lead and have access to income that's sent from the center. How do I generate income from my state where these things can be things of the past, and the minimum wage being, we see 18,000 or 24,000 is a bit, we can go past that.
All right, thank you very much for that, Fred. Concise to the point. Up next, this is a harrowing tale of sexual molestation, the death of a minor from New Telegraph. We're going to talk about Ochanya, who people have been talking about. There was a protest in Lagos, or a peaceful march in Lagos, should I say, on Friday. And now, according to the New Telegraph, there was a procession that was peaceful but with high emotions in Maitama, Abuja. There's been rage over the sexual molestation and death of Ochanya Elizabeth Ogbanje, who died as a result of complications arising from forced incestuous relationship with her uncle and his son. They essentially used this young girl as a sex toy. Now, protesters marched to the Federal Ministry of Justice, where they're insisting that this man, his name is Abuja, and he was a lecturer, Mr. Andrew Abuja, a lecturer at the Benue State Polytechnic, Ubokolo, and his son, Victor Abuja. They used this girl up until the age where she was 13, and then she eventually died from a fistula, which is a horrific condition for any young girl to have. Now, the protesters are demanding that the perpetrators, both Andrew and his son, Victor, be arrested and kept in police custody while being prosecuted for homicide. This doesn't feel like too much to ask for, but unfortunately, almost daily in the pages of Nigerian newspapers, we see stories so similar to this. What are your thoughts on this and what the Nigerian government is doing to protect the girl child from such horrific abuse? Yes, it's a heavy story.
It's a very heavy story. What kind of depraved human beings do we have? And you see, when you have someone that's been accused, I know he's still accused, okay? You're innocent until proven guilty, but when you're accused of such this kind of allegation of child molestation, and then is released for custody, this is like a menace to the society. I know he's still innocent for now, but you hold on to him for now.
This was her confessional statement.
Yeah,
before
confessional,
she died. This is what
statement.
she wrote before she died.
Exactly, I know, but you know they'll still
At
say,
13.
and unfortunately she's not even alive anymore. So, but here's the thing: there's already a Child Rights Act of 2003, okay, that says that that sex with a child is regarded as rape, which is life imprisonment.
But only about 26 states in this country have actually adopted that act.
Yeah,
I don't know
true.
if Benue is one of them.
But-
Is it even up to 26 states?
No, it is. It
Yeah.
is. But I'm not sure if Benue is one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something else to consider.
Yeah.
The reality, the gruesome reality that this is permitted in a number of states in Nigeria.
I wouldn't say it's permitted, but it's not explicitly like it says.
If it is
in
allowed to
Facebook.
happen,
it's
it is
not
It's
permitted.
not
criminalized.
allowed to happen. See, there's no laid down rule that makes it. Rape is rape everywhere.
There's no laid down
There's
rule to
rape
protect
is rape
children.
everywhere.
Well, let
in
me
those
let me
states.
correct that for you, because if any of the states that this act has not been adopted, you marry a 12-year-old girl,
Yes, but-
they would not classify that as rape, but
but
really that is what you are doing because that girl is 12.
But you still need the consent of the parents, won't you? You see, you know what? Let's even leave this. Let's think about this case. I know it's happened in Benue. You don't think it's adopted in Benue? I don't know if it's for
At the moment,
certain.
yeah. No.
But the fact is that someone has died now, and it is complication for VVF, which was caused by rape, which she confessed to before she died. So this is the account of a dead person, which is going to hold water in the court of law. And the fact is, this guy that has been arrested, they said the other guy is the younger one, the son is at large at the moment, but the one that was caught has been released. I don't get how that would happen, because we just need to think about having like a sex offender kind of register in Nigeria generally, and especially for child. And also, let's put this at the back of our mind also, for those people that also employ underage people, okay, you need to be really careful. It's against the law in most of the states, at least Lagos State's one of them. And these are the kind of things, and also parents that have kids that send their kids out to do this kind of labor. These are the things that happen.
Again, this girl had no one, so it's not.
She
She
had
went
the
to her.
mother.
She went to her auntie's house.
Yeah, it's painful, but
Who was meant to protect her?
Well, but I do understand that, Ayo. Thank you very much for dealing with. It's a very tough story to have dealt with, and I appreciate that. But we keep it moving. You can keep sending in your messages. We'll get to them in just a bit. The number to message, if you want to send a WhatsApp message, it is 0809-444-0981, and you can tweet at us. Just use the hashtag freshlypressed981. Now we move on to, I keep thinking 2019 is amusing stories, to be honest. Let's talk about the story of the Vanguard newspaper. Former Minister of Education, Dr. Ezekwesili, has said Buhari and Atiku not good for Nigeria. Yes, putting out statements. And now the Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, has said yesterday that President Buhari deserved a second term in office, since he has in the past 3.5 years impacted positively in the lives of Nigerians. However, Ezekwesili described Buhari and Atiku as men who cannot take a country forward. She went on to address a number of the corruption cases involving some of the president's most senior officials and a number of other things. Please take us through the story, Fred.
So she points to the fact that President Buhari practices enormous nepotism. He turns a blind eye to his friends or his people in his government that are practicing corruption while he's supposed to be fighting corruption. And then she points to the fact that Atiku, former Vice President Atiku, was even seen to have funded his own business establishment as a school through being a politician. And there's evidence to that through a letter that was written by staff from the school, and then all the cases that have come up against him, and that they're kind of birds of the same feather, and they're not going to be able to move us forward. The good thing is she lays out her roadmap, which really isn't indicated in this article. But going by her performance, actually, because I know of what she did when it came to the mining sector. She created the mining transparency in the mining sector. We're trying to get licenses and trying to go through the process of getting your license and all of that. And I know she did some stuff when it comes to the health, the educational sector. So if she's using it as a track record, But the only thing I'll say is that Atiku and her were in the same government, So I don't know what he'll come back to her for. But clearly what she's saying here is that we're basically looking at men of the same feather.
Thank you very much for that.
Very interesting, Fred. Thank you so very much for that. From VI, we have an aircon sending this message on WhatsApp. Says, no one under the sun has a right to confront the military in any part of the world. They are trained to kill. No one can stop them. Whoever tries is committing suicide. And at the same time, no militaries are allowed to use live bullets on unarmed civilians. Thank you very much, Aniakan, for that one. And Bengals says, sincerely, why should a religious body be so confrontational and aggressive against the military? What exactly is motivating them? Such procession of people in a city like Abuja should not be encouraged because of the chaotic traffic gridlock it will bring. I hope our so-called religiosity in this country will translate to godliness, which will consequently make us a better people and a better country. In Nigeria, it is more about the religious activities. Putting the teachings into practice is always secondary. Thank you very much, Benga, for that. We'll move on to this next story from this day newspaper. Fayose regains freedom from EFCC. He was arraigned on 22nd of October on 11 counts charged bordering on 6.9 billion naira campaign fund that they said was misappropriated, and being represented by Mr. Kanu Agabi, who was a former Attorney General of the Federation. The attorney said to address the court and said there's a presumption of innocence of an accused until guilt is established, and that was expressed by Fayose willingly presenting himself to the EFCC. He was granted bail in the sum of 50 million naira with 2 shorties in like sum, and asked to present a 3-year tax clearance. And then going further down the story, we see that most of the detainees, numbering about 150, were jubilating or when he was still there, but then became really sad and downcast when he was leaving, because apparently he took his stomach infrastructure to the prison and got some lawyers. I mean, that's a positive angle to look at it from.
It's a positive angle. Sometimes it's not every day that you get to have a celebrity in the prison with you. And I don't think he was sharing the same terrible conditions with every inmate in there. I'm sure.
But he fed them got lawyers for some of them who lacked representation.
I don't think, what I'm saying is that I don't think he was lying on the floor like with the pictures that we've seen.
Here's one question I have. I mean, if he's been arraigned in court for misappropriating funds, getting to about 6.9 billion, whose money is he using to feed these people and get lawyers?
Politics now. See, look, it's all about goodwill. Okay, he's trying to create a goodwill. I'm not saying he's guilty. Hey, I'm not saying so. I'm just saying he's trying to create a kind of goodwill picture for himself, and it's good for the inmates. You can see they said they were actually after being fed, they sang the anthem. After the stomach we had quickly filled, and in a way it's good for them, but at the end of the day, there was the news going around that he was finding it hard to get shorties. That's why he spent the weekend in prison. So in a way, maybe the prayers of some of the inmates was answered.
You really think he had issues securing bail?
No, I'm saying that these are rumors that were going around.
This is Ayo Esho that we are talking about.
I'm just saying. I mean, maybe someone, I don't know, whatever happened, I don't care. But the fact that someone's prayer was answered, I mean, because we need to go back to
answer to the tune of 50 million. Go on.
Well, yeah. So now here's the thing. I think at the end of the day, the main thing I want to pick out here is what happens in our prisons. Okay. I think Ikoyi prison is even one of the most privileged because it's in Lagos, and we have a lot of religious bodies and the likes that go there to help out. But prisons
Speaking from personal experience or just
I've never,
an outlook?
are you saying I've been
No,
incarcerated?
no, I'm not saying.
need
I'm
to-
asking. It's a question. Yeah.
No, I'm not incarcerated.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what you're asking. But I'm saying that out of experience, based on visits to the prisons.
I see.
Yes, and not like I have a family there or friend.
Okay, we can move on from that.
Anyway, as I was saying, yeah, we know that we have a terrible prison system in Nigeria. It's underfunded. We've seen pictures and we've had experience. And Ikoyi being the fact that it's in Lagos has a lot of influx by these people. So sometimes it's always good that I don't mean sometimes it's good for these politicians to visit the prison, not necessarily through the law being incarcerated, but they need to visit to understand the plight of these inmates, because at the end of the day, it's meant to be a penitentiary. It's not meant to be for them to be condemned for the rest of their life. They're meant to go through the system, come out, and be better people. So it's just one point that I saw in this story. Of course, Fayose was going to make bail. He's going to be freed for a period.
So
and
it was expected. Eh?
Yes, it's expected.
Thank you very much, Ayo, for that. Moving on to this next story from Daily Times newspaper. Fred, I'll come to you with this story. Nigeria celebrates 25 months of polio-free cases, and this was revealed by the Executive Secretary of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, NPHCDA, Mr. Faisal Shuaib. He disclosed this and mentioned it when he was speaking on Monday in Abuja. That was yesterday at the third meeting of the Expert Review Committee on polio routine immunization in Nigeria. They said this was done to deliberate on the need to sustain the routine immunization in the country, and they mentioned a few factors, that were affecting the fight against polio to eradicate. It said parents had advised parents really to always bring their children for immunization, saying that usually it's the inability of mothers and caregivers to bring their kids that's the problem, just standing in the way. Do you think that's enough to pose a problem to achieving this results, Fred?
Actually, it's quite shocking to know that that's what's standing in the way.
Yeah.
It's just parents and guardians or caretakers taking their children to get immunized. And I like what's stated in the article that they've trained people and they're getting mobile equipped teams to go further into the rural areas to make themselves available. So the government is taking step, and I think this is one of the things too, is that the Bill Gates and
Melinda Gates Foundation
takes seriously. So I believe they're being accountable and taking seriousness in approaching this status that we're trying to attain.
But Fred,
which is polio free.
Okay, please address the attitude of parents, really, because if this is the challenge that has been identified, doesn't it speak to the apathy on the part of the parents towards taking their wards? You'd expect this to be every parent's dream. Immediately they see free immunization or polio immunization made available, they should run to these centers to get their children immunized. But if they're holding back,
I think.
What do you see? I mean, with the sensitization,
it has to do with sensitization. I think they're a little bit skeptical about some of this immunization. Some of them believe that it's a way in which to sterilize some of their kids and the likes, especially in the far north.
As if suspecting an ulterior motive.
Yes, an ulterior motive. So I don't know.
I think it's a combination of multiple things. Probably their ulterior motives and being skeptical. The other thing is just, how you just feel we'll get to it, like it just passes, like something else is pressing. You're dealing with day-to-day activities. Maybe you feel it's far away. Because I've been in the north when I was doing mining, and some people are just in their rural local area. They don't even go 1 kilometer away.
Is it the distance or the lack of understanding?
It's just that you're just in your own space and you just don't feel like other people have grown up. Like if you say I grew up, nothing happened to me. So you don't.
But we've also had cases in which some of the people that were meant to give the vaccines were being stoned in the north.
Yep.
So that's another angle to look at it from. Thank you very much, Fred and Ayo and Ikemesit for the side hump. Moving on to Punch for this next story. I'll come to you, Ikemesit. It's your turn now. So let's look at this report on $22 billion at 481.7 billion unremitted funds for 2015. The Nigerian Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative have clarified that this sum, the $22.06 billion and 481.75 billion naira, listed as yet to be remitted to the Federation accounts by the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC), comes as no surprise there, and its subsidiaries, the Nigerian Petroleum Development Company. What are your thoughts on this?
You are in shade mode this morning, aren't you? Yeah. So essentially, what NEITI is saying is that, and they issued a clarifying statement to this effect, is that the non-remittance of revenue by the NNPC and others did not take place under this administration. So what they were saying is these figures, which are regularly bandied around, date from the period between 1999 and 2015. As a matter of fact, a statement from NEITI said that the unremitted amounts largely relate to outstanding NLNG dividend payments between the periods from 2000 to 2015 and money due from a couple of assets divested by the Nigerian Petroleum Development Company, which is an NNPC subsidiary, between 2011 and 2017. Essentially, what NEITI is saying is these things that we're talking around did not happen under this administration. They happened under the last administration. As a matter of fact, they called out the media for quote and unquote politicizing the work of NEITI, which just feels interesting to me. Why are they issuing this clarification in late October 2018? Is unreal. The interesting thing to look out for, though, is that according to the executive secretary of NEITI, Waziri Adio, a report on the current state of affairs with respect to unremitted funds or otherwise in the petroleum sector for 2015 and 2016 will be out by December this year. So it'll be interesting to see if under this administration will be more, the NNPC has been more diligent with respect to remitting funds to the federation accounts.
Will it come as a surprise when that happens?
Of course not.
Okay.
We
All right.
have a corrupt free minister now.
Interesting. Moving on to Guardian.
You wrote the statement.
the
That
next
sounds like a prepared statement.
Story, Ayo, I'll come to
Okay.
you for analysis on this one. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, SGF, Boss Mustafa, has told the governing boards and councils of federal parastatals, universities, and medical institutions that they lack the power to suspend or sack a chief executive appointed by the president. While he was addressing the induction of the batches 2, 3, and 4 members of the affected boards and councils yesterday in Abuja, he said undue interference by board chairmen in the day-to-day activities of their respective agencies, blatant disregard for extant regulations, restricting of board meetings. He mentioned that most of these things are the reasons why they're not moving forward, and it's causing disharmony among personnel, amongst other things he stated. What are your thoughts?
Is the federal government now saying that they don't support the suspension of Usman Yusuf? Because from what we're saying, I mean, maybe subliminal, but I think this is the kind of message they're trying to pass in this induction. But I wish I could really get my hands on the procedures exactly to know what the statutory right of the board and council is. But they made mention of the fact that they've been issuing directive to staff without recourse to the chief executive officer. Now, if that's true, I would agree with that. I don't think that should be done, thereby undermining authorities and creating disharmony amongst personnel.
Yeah.
Now, if that is happening, that is not right. And they also said that they've been using the labor union to also fight the powers that be. However, I think that I don't know what the rules are, but I think that they should be able to, in a way, be able to suspend if they feel like there's any form of wrongdoing, and then get permission. I agree that has to come from the president, because it's the president that made the nomination. Yes,
No, I think it's a matter of law.
Yeah, that's what
I think
I'm saying.
I think the government is right on this one. I don't get to see that every day.
Yeah, thank you very much. Move on to this one from Thisday newspaper as a means of mention, and you touch on this for 30 seconds or more, or less actually. Fraudsters cloning our officials' Facebook accounts. That's what the DSS is alleging. Department of State Services. They're saying that there are people who are cloning the Facebook accounts of their senior officials and defrauding members of the public.
Yeah, and yet another symptom of the rising incidence of identity fraud right online. So essentially they're saying employment scam rings are being run on Facebook and people are impersonating, I think, including amongst other people, the past acting director general of the DSS, to request that members of the public pay monies in order to secure employment here. Nigeria. Let's give ourselves a break on this. We all know this is bogus. Let's just deal with this once and for all. Anyone asking you for money online to do anything, nah, it's not real.
Thank you, Ikemesit.
And we'll just round up with messages that have come up on our WhatsApp and our Twitter. DSK says, honestly, I'm ashamed of our political leaders. The case of Ochanya and countries where sanity exists, this should be a national issue that does not require protest to evoke attention. While Isaac from Ikeja says, it's not rape when the parents of the child consent to child marriage. I'm not in support of rape, but let's tag issues the way they are. The parents of these children should be held responsible. We don't have time to address that. But we've also got this message up on Twitter from Mr. G Quest, who says, Butiku is what Auntie Obi calls Buhari and Atiku. They're Siamese twins and have nothing fresh to offer as Nigerians. Love Auntie Obi, he says. Ayo says, I don't have a problem with Obi's opinion about Buhari and Atiku. However, I can't trust her either. And neither do I see her as an option. We've all seen cases where women were given power in sensitive sectors and they misused it to perform even worse than the men. Wow. It's become a battle of the sexes, has it? And finally, Adekule Fatuga says, I think the government should sit down with El-Zakzaki to know exactly what he and his group want and settle this matter once and for all. It's getting out of hand. Better still, take him to court. That's what they're attempting to do.
Thank you very much. Thanks to our analyst in the studio, Ishol One, Mr. G is not here, FB Alison.
Mr. FB Alison and Judge Ike.
Lagos, coming up next in 15 minutes, we talk entertainment inside of a grapevine. Good morning.
I invest.
Not rape. I really I don't think I could have responded to that dispassionately.
Yeah. Just talking
Like, think